video game adaptations. We have seen the rise and now the somewhat steadily, to an extent, decline of comic book films. I feel it is time for us to finally see the rise of actual quality video game adaptations. Don't get me wrong, there's still occasional few comic book films, left and right, that I actually still enjoy quite a bit. But with that said, at the end of the day, I think it is time to give video game adaptations an actual chance. This is a bit of a combination of discussion at 10 video game properties that I would love to see get film adaptations, as long as they do respect to the source material. And with that said, yeah, chose to wear my PlayStation shirt. Figured why not? Because of the topic. Shows basic creepy music in the background from Resident Evil 2, from the main hall of the police station. One of my favorite pieces of all time in horror games. With that said, what are 10 games I would like to see get film adaptations? And leave a comment below and tell me your thoughts of some you would like to see. And it can include both CG 3D animated or live action. Now, we already know recently, of course, there's a new Mortal Kombat film coming. Hopefully, it ends up a lot better than the previous film. Also, we have, of course, officially in the works now, a actual Silent Hill 2 movie being done by the director for the original Silent Hill movie. So I'm actually got a decent amount of hope, as Silent Hill 1 film remains my number one favorite film adaptation off of video game of all time. So with that said, we know already that there's also a new Mario movie in the works, and now a Legend of Zelda film is in the works. Hopefully they do justice, but with that said, what are 10 films that I would like to see get film adaptations? 10 video games. First off, I would actually like to see a actual theatrical film adaptation. First story I would like to see get this treatment is a little game called Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. However, only as long as Disney stays hands off, and also Kathleen Kennedy is gone, hopefully, by then. Just so they don't destroy it like they did the trash sequel trilogy. And that includes both Rise of Skywalker and Last Jedi. But no, I think definitely Knights of the Old Republic has great potential to be an incredible trilogy of films. There is so much lore and material to work with from Legends, especially do justice, bring in Emperor Vitiate, or heck, also introduce Lord Scourge, or characters like Darth Malak, Darth Malgus, Darth Revan, Darth Nihilus. There is so much untapped potential there with the Old Republic era, I feel could make an incredible film. Second, I would like to see a film adaptation of World of Warcraft. Some will say, well, we got the Warcraft movie. Yeah, but technically speaking, it's a little bit more based on the actual story from the Warcraft games, not World of Warcraft. Though I am a big fan, actually, of specifically Warcraft 2, Dark Saga. I love that. And I love the cinematics, but when it comes to World of Warcraft movie, if we are to get, I want a full CG animated film and not live action. Unlike Warcraft, though, it was actually a pretty good film and one of my favorites, honestly. I think the casting was pretty solid all around, and the CG was top tier, actually. But no, I specifically want a CG movie, and it should revolve around Arthas, The rise of Arthas transforming and becoming the Lynch King. Arguably my favorite character from the cinematics and learning of the story and world building of World of Warcraft. I think Arthas the Lynch King is probably the coolest character, honestly. I do love my Edge Lords after all. But with that said, the next film that I would like to see an adaptation of is actually another Silent Hill game. We've already seen a somewhat not the greatest adaptation of Silent Hill 3, along with Silent Hill 1. We knew Silent Hill 2 is in the works now. I would argue I would love to see an adaptation of Silent Hill for The Room, but I think from more of a film perspective, I feel like Silent Hill Origins could be a more interesting movie with proper direction and proper leadership over the film. I definitely feel actually Silent Hill Origins can make an interesting movie, and I think maybe look into it because there's real potential, especially with it being a bit more grounded backstory, looking more into the origins of a current key important figure from the earlier era of Silent Hill. But also, if they were, I would appreciate them to do at least one of the films be a bit maybe filmed in West Virginia, as it's in the game where it's supposed to take place. So the first movie obviously is more based off of a ghost town in Pennsylvania, Centralia, which is an interesting backstory. But with that said, that is when I'd like to see Silent Hill Origins. A few others that I would like to see adaptations of outside of WoW, Knights of the Old Republic, as well as Silent Hill Origins. I would also like to see a film adaptation of another little property, horror wise. I feel could make a great horror film if it's done correctly, based reasonably loyal to the actual source material. That being, honestly, the story of Castlevania. I feel could make a very interesting. Yeah, we got an anime series from Netflix, but I'd actually like to see either a full top tier CG animated film or a live action with specific individuals. There is an actor I would actually be interested to a certain extent, possibly in the role of Dracula. I know some people disagree with me, but personally, one that comes to mind, as long as it doesn't play a really just over the top weirdo, I would actually like to see somebody like Johnny Depp in the role of Count Dracula. Or perhaps somebody like Liam Neeson. Just suggestions. But, and actors I'm very big uber fan of. But with that said, other adaptations off of video game films that I would like to see is another one from the world of Nintendo. And that is specifically, I would like to see maybe a either CG or live action, one or the other. I'd like to see actually a film adaptation off of F-Zero, because I feel that could be a great racing movie and story, and setting up great world building. The real question is who would play Captain Falcon, I guess, is the real question. But it is my favorite racing series from Nintendo, not Mario Kart like most people. It's F-Zero, going all the way back. And next, I would like to see adaptation. We've seen adaptations of Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and definitely not very great Tekken. How about let's get a good quality adaptation with good CGI mixed with actual live action? A Killer Instinct movie. I would love that so much. As long as it's treated with proper respect, and I would almost say somebody like Maximilian Dude would be a great pick to be maybe involved as a producer on the film, as he is an uber lover of fine games in general, but also was hands on with, of course, video editing and things for the Shadow Lord story mode and other stuff for KI with Microsoft. So I feel would be actually quite an interesting little story there, especially if Max was involved. I would actually want somebody has legit real passion and love for KI, as this has come from a big fan of KI going all the way back to the Super Nintendo. Next, that I would like to actually see an adaptation, leave comment, give me your thoughts. But I would like to actually see an adaptation of a Final Fantasy game. So nothing like Spirits Within or a semi-direct to video and stuff like Advent Children. I'm talking like a theatrical style film release. Specifically, I would like to see a theatrically released film based around the story of Final Fantasy VI. I feel it is great. The real question would be who would play Kefka? I think is the big. Also, who would play Terra? There is so many potentials there, I feel. And let's be honest, after Final Fantasy VII in popularity, Final Fantasy VI is probably up there, almost at the same levels. Well, worldwide, I would say 6 is probably a little bit more beloved than 7, but for some reason, here in the West, specifically in North America, Final Fantasy VII is overly, I think, to a point, over popular, overrated, in my opinion. 6 deserves way more love and respect, and I think Kefka is overall a more interesting villain than Sephiroth. Don't get me wrong, original Sephiroth kind of sucked in original Final Fantasy VII. It was Advent Children and Crisis Core that made me more of an actual fan of Sephiroth as a character. But Kefka, I was a fan of from day one. The basically demigod Joker, if you will, the Joker of Final Fantasy, and he loves chaos, like the Joker. Except imagine Joker with insane levels of power, and I think Kefka kind of suits that very well. With that said, 4 others that I would like to see adaptations. One other fighting game series I would actually like to see a adaptation of. I feel like it might be better as a CG, though if the casting is right, it could be interesting. Personally, I would actually like to see an adaptation theatrically of Soul Calibur. I feel it is something that has enough potential, or more specifically, Soul Blade. But I think it definitely lends itself to a theatrical because of how, frankly, it's always the Soul Calibur series has been very big on the classical music as well as many other elements which I think fit perfectly with a cinematic film. Just my opinion. Then, after that, others that I would actually like to see, I think have real potential for good storytelling and good world building that I would like to personally see. But let's maybe go with some a bit more family friendly esque. I'm not sure how some people's opinions are, but personally, I feel something like Portal could actually be quite an interesting film. I know some people be like, well, a first person like puzzle game, really? I feel like one, there's real potential there, and two, you can mix stuff from both Portal 1 and Portal 2, as well as other, do like tons of Easter eggs for other properties and stuff that Valve did. Like maybe have little references to Half-Life, which actually would probably be a pretty cool thing to do an adaptation of. But I like Portal. I feel GLaDOS would be a great cinematic villain personally, and GLaDOS is just awesome as a video game villain. Plus, the whole cake is a lie meme would be nice to see on a theatrical level. Speaking of, Other stuff that I would like to see a big large film or a franchise based on, storytelling wise. I would actually love to see a theatrically based series of films based around a little, maybe unknown property to some people. No, seriously, I actually think Devil May Cry could make quite an awesome cinematic. Yes, we got anime adaptations and stuff, but for me, Devil May Cry is something I would love to see on the big screen. I just, I guess the real question would be, but who would play what roles? Hard to say, though. You would definitely have to choose, I think, some really good actors, especially to play characters such as obviously Dante's brother, Virgil, which is one of my favorite characters, arguably of the entire franchise. I just love Virgil more than Dante always have. Outside of DMC, Devil May Cry game, I prefer Dante, but with that said, and what do I think more or less last would I like to see, or I think has a lot of real potential as a theatrically released film? I would feel if we're looking more from the perspective of storytelling and everything, I would actually like to see, frankly, from the beginning, a complete reboot. I would like to see a new cinematic adaptation of Resident Evil, specifically Resident Evil Remake, as the basis for the film. Not the route they went with the live action films, so no Alice, please. Instead, revolve around Jill and Chris Redfield. Also, I would like to see an actual good adaptation of Tyrant as well. And let's not have like liquors and stuff in, like, first be actually loyal to the original, though. I think the remake could make a bit more interesting versus, but all only thing I would ask for from the early 2000s original live action, please bring Marilyn Manson back to compose the music. That is one of the areas I think the original live action Resident Evil movie really excelled in, was the soundtrack. Manson did an excellent job with the film, musically speaking. I think his scores were really creepy, eerie, perfect for Resident Evil, as well as some head nods to actual Resident Evil music as well from the actual game would be nice. But there's some real untapped potential there, and based strictly around like Resident Evil Remake from the GameCube, rather than something else. And go a bit more heavily into the actual survival horror aspect. With that said, there's an honorable mention game I would love to see get an adaptation because I love the Cthulhu influence and stuff. Though I know it'll never happen because it's a cult classic film or cult classic game, and that is Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. I would love to see an adaptation off of that, but unfortunately, though it did sell like 2 million copies on the GameCube, Nintendo has never re-released it remastered or anything, which sucks as it is one of the best survival horror games ever created, in my opinion. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Leave a comment, give me your thoughts, and what you would like to see adaptation-wise. But I think there's some real untapped potential there, and I feel the era of video game adaptations is now here. We may finally have a shot at getting more good quality level adaptations, whether it be CG or live action. With that said, I look forward to seeing people's comments, and though, yeah, I agree, things like Dino Crisis also has real potential on the big screen. People love Jurassic Park, why not? Jurassic Park meets Resident Evil. Definitely makes sense. With that said, see you soon.